Hey everyone, Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make house music in the style of Detroit Swindle. As usual, you get the project file and samples from this video in the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there because they will be available on there. And yeah, let's dive in. So, the first layer that I have here is this little arpeggio that I made with analog. It sounds like this. So the way that I made this, I'll show you the MIDI first. This is just playing the simple chord. It's an A sharp minor ninth, which is the first chord that the chord progression is playing, so it's just matching that. But I added this extra D sharp on top, and the reason for this is because when it's just the A sharp minor ninth, what happens is, I'll show you. It comes back down, and right at the end there, it plays this A sharp again. And the reason for this is because there just aren't enough notes to play for it to just consistently go up the scale for this quarter note at the rate that I have the arpeggiator set to. So I added this extra note on there. And there we go. Now we can get like an arpeggio that just goes up and doesn't come back down. So then for the synth sound here, like I said, I have this arpeggio. It's set to 24th notes, and it's going up. So it's kind of like going for that quick sort of skippy arpeggio. And yeah, so I have analog here. I just have a square wave, one oscillator, going into a low pass filter, which has a bit of an envelope on it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. The only other thing I did in analog here was I added a bit of vibrato. I had the amount pretty high, but the rate kind of low. So that's what gives it that like old school sort of analog warbly sound. So then after that, I have this echo, which is set up like this. So I just have the time set like that, pretty quick. It's not synced, so it's really just doing like an echo. As opposed to like a super long delay. I have the feedback set there, and then the dry wet is there. I wanted a pretty good amount of echo, and you'll see with the reverb as well. I wanted a pretty good amount of echo and reverb on this because it plays for such a short amount of time that you want it to ring out afterwards. So yeah, that's why I have the dry wet so high. So then after that, I have the saturator. It's just giving it a bit of drive, and I use the analog clip to bring out the echo a little bit more. Actually, I found when I turn this bass frequency up, it tends to bring out the echoes, so I figured why not. So then after that, I have this reverb with the decay time set there, and a pretty high dry wet, 37%. You definitely tell it's there. And yeah, this is just the same kind of principle as I was saying with the echo, where it's like, there's so much time that this sound isn't playing. I mean, it only plays for like a quarter note, so might as well have like a super long reverb or an echo like that to just sort of make it reverb. So then after that, I have a compressor side chaining it to the kick, and then I have this EQ8 cutting out the low end, because sometimes echo can create some messy stuff. So the next layer that I have here is this clavinet, which sounds like this. So you may be saying to yourself, this doesn't really sound like a clavinet, and this is true. This is a sound that I found in Ableton Sounds, actually. It's just like this nice kind of like bell type of thing. I'll talk more about this when I show you the next layer, but it layers really nicely with the next layer, and I just thought it was a good thing to add on top because this, which is the next thing I was going to show you, doesn't have a lot of high end, but this does. So it's kind of just adding that on there. So yeah, so this is just this glass clavinet preset, like I said. I didn't touch any of this stuff. And then what I added to it was I gave it a bit of echo. This is very similar to the one that's on the arpeggio. I believe, yeah, see the time is like the same. All this other stuff is the same, but you can see I have less feedback on here and less dry wet because, again, this sound does play throughout the whole thing, so we don't want that one to be too taken over by echo. So then after that, I have this compressor, just side chaining it to the kick, and then I have this EQ8, which is cutting out the low end, boosting the high end a little bit, because again, this layer is mostly to give it a bit of high end, and then just like a small cut there, I guess. It kind of needed it. So the next thing that we have here is this E-piano, or electronic piano, which sounds like this. So this is one of the Ableton ones. It's just this EP faceplant. It's a pretty good kind of like Rhodes electronic piano type of sound. And yeah, so as far as the MIDI goes on this one, I'll show you this now. This is like the main chord progression that's playing throughout the track. You can see, like I was saying, these are the chords. So basically what I did here was I made these major and minor ninth chords. So you can see like here's a minor ninth, and then here's a major ninth, and there's another major, another minor, and I just kind of had them play this like bouncy chord progression where, you know, it's doing this very rhythmic kind of like I said, it's just very bouncy and syncopated. So this is pretty straightforward, you know, like what I recommend to write these kind of patterns is sort of define a chord progression. So in this case, I had these 4 chords, and they were just playing like each for a half note or something like that. And then what I did was, once I had the chords, it was very easy to just go in and make this kind of rhythmic pattern. Like I said, all you have to do is just make something kind of quick and syncopated. And then another note I will make about this is, one, you can see I have this groove here, this Logic swing. I have this on all the MIDI clips in this project. I'll show you as I go through. And the reason for this is because, like, I could do the swing myself where I just move it over. But what this is going to do is it's going to give everything a uniform swing. So, like, since we have so many elements here that are all kind of grooving together, if we went through and just, like, made each MIDI note have its own swing, what would happen is then when they all play on this 16th note or on this one or whichever one, all of them would be slightly off, and that might be kind of cool in some cases, but in my experience, it sounds kind of weird. You can still get the human feel while keeping everything really tight and clean if you just use the same groove on everything. And then the other thing I was going to say about this is if you look at the velocities here, I sort of move them up and down a little bit, like just kind of with how the pattern sounded best. You can kind of hear it on this one. Like, it's subtle, but it just gives it that human feel. So then the next thing that I did with this was I have this echo on here. It's just the same kind of one that was on this clavinet. And then I have a compressor sidechain to the kick. And then I have an EQ8 just cutting out some low end, boosting a little bit of high end on this layer. You know, it sounded pretty solid. So then after that, I have this bass, which sounds like this. So this is just a bass, like a synth bass that I made with analog, just playing the root notes of the chords. What I did was, if you see the chords here, what I did on those was I actually put the root notes all down an octave. So I just copied that MIDI onto the bass and then got rid of the top voices. So this is a pretty simple sound. Basically, all it's doing is I have this square wave which has the pulse width set there. So I'll show you what that kind of sounds like if I turn off the saw wave. You can hear it's like that really digital kind of nice pulse wave sound. And then I have a saw wave as well, which is pitched up an octave, just to make it a little bit thicker. And then these are both going into a low pass filter, which is set like this. It's got a little bit of an envelope, just gives it a pluck. And then the amplitude set like that. And then after that, I have a little bit of saturation. Well, actually kind of a lot of saturation, but it's not really going as hard as you would think. Here's without the saturator. And then width, so you can hear it's just giving it some grit and beefing it up a bit and making it just kind of like more fat. This sound is all about like having really like organic, analog kind of textured sounds. So, you know, I wanted to use a lot of saturation and things like that that add texture to your sound. And then after that, I just have it sidechained to the kick. So yeah, this is pretty straightforward. You know, you just have to find a good one, a good bass sound that works with the kick. And one thing I will also note is the bass MIDI is a little bit different from the chord MIDI. If I highlight these two together, you can kind of see. So this is the chord MIDI, and then this is the bass MIDI. And you can see, like here, for example, this note, and then this, and then this, it kind of goes like, it's like dun dun ba da dun. So, you know, adding little variations like that between the bass and the chords when you have patterns like this can really add some cool groove to your tracks and, you know, just give them some more of an interesting vibe. So then, yeah, the next layer I have here is the shaker, which sounds like this. This is pretty straightforward. It's just playing, it's just like some extra percussion. I've got a swing on there. It's just doing like these, and then the second note has the velocity turned down a little bit. And this is kind of playing off of this hi-hat. So here's the hi-hat. So yeah, you can hear it's just accentuating those upbeats. So for the hi-hat, I just have this sample. And then it's playing 16 notes. I have the swing on there. And you can see, same thing as the shaker, I have the velocities set kind of, to build a little bit. The velocity is really important with this style. It's the best way to really get that kind of like organic human feel if you play around with it. So yeah, I just tried to do it as much as I could here. And then with this hi-hat, one thing I did have to do was cut out some low end. I have this high pass filter here. Here's without it. And then width, so it's subtle, but I just didn't want that to mess up the mix in any way. So the next thing I have here is this kick, which sounds like this. So I don't have any processing on this. It's just like a pretty simple, clean kick. It works really well in this mix though, because it really like holds the bass and the low end, and also like just the melodic layers in general down. Like if you listen to it, it just really like, it makes for a really good kick when you have like a little bit of a slower beat. We're at 121 BPM, so it's a little bit slower. You want to have like a nice kick that just really has that impact that, yeah, like fills up your mix and gives it that punch that you want. So that is pretty much that for the kick. And then the next thing that I have here is this little disco loop. So I'll show you this thing. It sounds like this. It's just a loop from an old disco track that I put in here, and then I high pass it. This is very important because, like, with this style, you kind of need to use loops to some degree. You can make your, like, hi-hats and shakers sound really organic with programming them in MIDI, but nothing really beats that feel when you add those with something more organic or something more, like, live, which I got with this sample here. So yeah, that's just like a nice percussion layer in the background. And then the next thing that I have here is this clap, which sounds like this. So this is just like a pretty clean, simple clap. It's layered with this one. And yeah, I'll show you what they sound like together. So you can see they just kind of complement each other. Like we have a high-end clap, and then a low-end clap. And then the low-end clap is more like punch, and this is kind of more like, I like to think of it as sort of like air. Like it's more, just like in the high end. And yeah, so then the next layer that we have here is this drum rack, which sounds like this. So I just have all these different percussion sounds. They're kind of like, hand percussion, like bongos and congas and all that kind of stuff. And then I just have them all in a drum rack together so you can kind of like sequence them easily. And I have a groove on there like I was saying before. They're just playing this kind of pattern that's playing off of the rest of the drums. Like if I play this with the loop and the kick, you can hear they're just sort of, like adding that extra little bit of groove in between the drums. And then the last thing that I have here is this 909 snare, which sounds like this. It just plays at the end of every 4 bars like that. The thing about this is that, with this style, all the drums I had done before this were trying to sound like really organic and like just sort of, like very organic and textured. But there is still an element of like house music, which is maybe less organic and more like machine-like and more like using, 909 samples and 808s and all that kind of stuff. So I brought this 909 snare in here to just give it some fills, and it kind of almost reminds you every 4 bars like, hey, you're listening to a house track. So that's going to be it for this video. Like I said, you can get the project file and samples from this video in the description. If you're a patron on my Patreon, check them out there. Make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comments, and check out my social media, which is on the screen right now. Thank you again, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another tutorial.